What's up, everybody? Wanted to talk to you a little bit about hype, media, and Christians today. And, I just have this sense that there's a lot of hype that's going on. It's not just news. It's not just media. Just as I talk to various people, there's a lot of just intensity that a lot of people are dealing with. And I just want to talk about how we deal with that, how we deal with it when it's media, how we deal with it in public, all of those types of things, I just want to cast this in the right light. If you remember just all of the hype over the Ridgecrest earthquakes. Remember we got hit with a couple of earthquakes and everybody was like, oh my gosh, earthquakes. And then it was like for weeks on end, it was like following the USGS, and everybody was talking about there was another, are these aftershocks? Are they precursors? And blah, 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 blah. And then just all of a sudden one day, they just stopped talking about it. And I guess everybody figured, well, the earthquakes must have just stopped, right? But it's really not. What it really is hype. Do you remember seeing this, right? Have you seen this? It says, 6/24/20. This is just a couple days ago. ABC News. Magnitude 5.8 earthquake hit about an hour north of Ridgecrest in Lone Pine area. That's what we're talking about. Like, these earthquakes, they actually haven't stopped at all. They've continued to go, and people have just gone on with regular life in spite of them. And I would wager to say, I didn't go do the research, but I'd wager to say these earthquakes were probably hitting that area on a regular basis long before it even got big in the news. But, there was the right timing and time to make some hype about it, and then we did for a couple of weeks, and then something more interesting came along. Media went and jumped on that. Well, what I just showed you was from a couple days ago, and what you actually see if you go on the USGS website is that these earthquakes never stopped, right? They never stopped. And you may not have known that. You may have thought they did. Or maybe have not thought about it at all because the media stopped talking about it. Well, it is. Well, what happened? We stopped talking about it. The hype fizzled out. So let's talk about hype and media a little bit, because the reason that we have hype is because we have differences of opinions on things. So people like to camp out. And if you're going to camp out, you're going to have to camp out in the extremes, right? Because you don't ever want to look like a moderate too close to your opponent, right? So people tend to camp out in extremes. Like, if I want to change your mind, right? They say you always need to ask for more than you really want. And if I want to change your mind, who disagrees with me right here, then I can't be right here. I'm going to have to jump all the way over here. And if I jump all the way over here and you want to change my mind, you're going to jump all the way over here. And hype, we get this hype because of this, because if we're going to try to convince somebody something is true, we need to move into the extreme so that we can pull people in our direction. Not to mention, I think we're just wired for extremes, right? Like there's something that's just not exciting about a moderate position on something, right? And, well, why? Well, because hype sells. And so, it, just as an example, like, if you were reading a newspaper or reading an article online or whatever, like, are you more likely to read the article that says earthquakes, the sign of the apocalypse, or are you more likely to read this other article that says small to moderate earthquakes continue in California deserts? Like which one is actually exciting? And it's like, well, one says that there's like small to moderate earthquakes that are happening in the desert, and they're continuing, and they always have been happening, at least for as long as we're aware of. And that's just not exciting news. But the idea that there could be some sort of apocalyptic element to this, now that's something that we can really get excited about, right? And I think for most people, you just have a sense that your life might be a little bit boring anyway. And so why not hype it up a little bit, right? We get attracted, we get stuck in our day-to-day routines, and we're not even always talking about issues of right and wrong, but, something hits the media and it's like, that's something I can get behind and I can get excited about. Or maybe, hype works in the opposite too. Like, they hype stuff up on the internet and you're like, man, that's not at all. That couldn't be more off base from what I believe. And we can get excited from the opposite perspective. But that's what hype does. It just gets us really excited, right? Media outlets, they're basically just businesses selling a product. And, and so hype sells, so they're always gonna hype. Like, I don't even blame media for this. And I don't care if you're a CNN or a Fox News or whatever, whatever. Like, watch whatever news you want or don't watch, like me, and whatever, because they're all businesses that are trying to sell something, and hype sells, right? Moderation is boring. Balance is boring. Hype sells. And they're all going to hype. They're all going to work into these polarized extremes so they can argue with each other. And the more they argue and the more they hype things, then the more interest they get and the more money they make, right? And it's really not even a problem of evil in the media, right? I mean, it could be sort of in like an underlying social tensions type of, powers and principalities in the evil sort of way, but I mean, it's really not in a tangible sense a problem of evil in the media. It's actually really a problem with the human heart. I want you to hear me on this, because in our hearts, we're always looking for the next big thing. We want the hype. They wouldn't be trying to sell you hype if you didn't already want hype. Like, nobody's out there running in a successful business giving people something that they don't even want, right? It doesn't work that way. If you don't have a product that people want, they're not going to buy it. And so hype sells only because you want hype. Right? So don't blame the media outlets for selling hype. You're the one who wants it. You're the one who, it's a problem in your own heart. Now the media, they're absolutely going to take a hold of that. They know that your heart is attracted to hype, that they can say something one way and they can get you really excited, and they can say something another way and they can get you really angry, and they're going to leverage that. They're going to leverage the hype. They're going to do that in order to move you in whatever way that they want to move you. But it's a problem in the human heart. Look what Solomon said in Proverbs 20, verse 5. He said, "Counsel in a person's heart is deep water, but a person of understanding draws it out." A person of understanding draws it out. There's a lot of stuff going on in your heart. It's a deep water full of all kinds of things that you're not even in your head consciously aware of. Like, you don't even realize all the influences and things that are going on in your heart. And you don't even know what's in there. It's such a deep water. But when it comes to discerning all of the hype in media and in people's, conversations and on social media and all of these types of things, when it comes to discerning all the hype in politics and frankly, even in the church, like, there's a lot of mire to wade through. Like, there's a lot of stuff, and it's hard because some hype sounds right. And you go, yeah, I'm over here. I got my hype over here, and then some hype sounds wrong. And like, there's other people over here with this hype that we think is wrong, and they're like, but we're right over here with our hype, and you're wrong over there with your hype. And it causes all this dissension, and it can be very, very confusing to try to figure out what to believe. And much hype sounds like really complicated mix of right and wrong. Like if you're kind of a thoughtful person, you'll step back and you'll hear something in the news and you're like, yeah, we got to get out and protest, or we got to get out we got to go get out this special mask so that we can go to the grocery store, or whatever the hype is that's out there. Like, it's kind of a complicated mix of right and wrong, because you can sense like, okay, it's good, we want to preserve life and we want to treat people fairly, but then over here and we're actually treating others unfairly if we do this, and it becomes very, very complicated. And I'm not taking sides on any of those types of issues that are out there right now. Go listen to our other videos that I put out, because I have explained some of those types of issues. But most hype, it's over-realized. It's an extreme, and it's an extreme perspective on a very complicated mix of things, that some things that you believe, some things you don't believe, some things that are adhere to biblical values, and yet they're tied intricately with things that don't. Just look at any political measure out there, right? They're like, oh yeah, we're trying to do this to, we're going to raise taxes for this great idea, but in here, tied over here, is this thing you hate. And all bills that go through the politics, they're all written that way. This very complicated mix of things that you agree with, things that you love, things that you hate, and things you disagree with. And you just kind of have to be discerning to wade through all of it. Now, here's the thing. God is not a God of hype. And there's a story in 1 Kings 19, verses 11 through 14. And I'm not gonna read it, but it's sort of, this story about Elijah, and Elijah has gone out to the mountain, and he's looking for the Lord, and he wants to experience the Lord's presence there, and he's waiting on the Lord, and so the Lord sends a great and mighty wind. And, I'm thinking in my mind as I read that, like a tornado, and this tornado tears through, and Elijah's like, God's not in the wind. And then here comes this horrible earthquake, like not the 5.8 up in Ridgequest, but I'm guessing like an 8.0, and this earthquake happens, and Elijah, God's not in the earthquake. And then, and all of this happens. And then something else happens. He hears a soft voice, like a whisper. And Elijah comes out of this cave that he's in, and he listens, and he finds out that, the Lord was in the soft whisper, the soft voice. And this is the thing, like, he's not in the earthquake, he's not in the wind, he's not in the fire, was another one of those episodes, but he's in the thin and the quiet sound. God's not a God of hype, right? We want to, even in the Christian community, go, look at this horrible disease, look at this horrible earthquake, look at this horrible natural disaster, look at this war and all of this type of stuff, and we get hyped on it, right? And we build all this hype, and it's like, you know what? God's not a God of hype. That's not how he's trying to communicate with you. And, so how do you deal with this? Well, you need understanding. You need understanding. And you need discernment according to that understanding. Proverbs 20, verse 12, we kind of get a picture of this there, where Solomon tells us, the hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord made them both. And sort of the idea there is that like if you want ears to hear and you want eyes to see, you want to be able to discern and to see things for what they really are, listen, you've got to go to the Lord for that. It doesn't matter how much you drown yourself in Fox News or CNN or all of these rabbit trails of things that are out there on the internet, on Facebook and Instagram, and don't even get me started on Twitter, right? And like you go to these things and they're just all hype, man. Like I just don't even go there, right? The hearing ear and the seeing eye, the Lord made them. That's where you go. The Lord Jesus is the only one who can help you to see and hear through all of the mixed messages that the world wants to throw at us. Look at Colossians chapter 2, verse 8. Here the Apostle Paul says, see to it that nobody enslaves you with philosophy and foolish deception, which conform to human traditions and the way the world thinks and acts rather than to Christ. And that's what we're dealing with here. That is it. On the head, this is human traditions. It is philosophy that is empty. It is foolish deception which conforms to the ways of this world and not to the ways of Jesus. Don't get caught up in it. Don't let yourself get excited about it. At the end of the day, it comes down to Jesus. It comes down to hope. We talked a little bit about hope in the message that's going to be in our Sunday service. And if you hope in Jesus, like, just why would you panic over the things of this world? You have an eternal inheritance. Paul says to be absent from the body is to be present with the Lord. It's like it's better for you that something horrible happened in this world and you lose your life so that you get to be with Jesus. That's the biblical worldview. And that doesn't mean that we don't stay here and carry out our purposes that God has left us here to accomplish while we're here. But we don't have to fear anything because God is already in control of all of it. He's already got it. If anything, if I can say anything about the hype that's going on, everything that's out there, I would just like to say this. You need to be a skeptic. By all means, hear the hype. But don't believe it. Be a skeptic. Go to God's word. Let God convey truth. And as you grow in that truth, you grow in that understanding, then maybe you can pick through the weeds, right? You can pick through all the mire and you can find the shreds of truth in it. Watch out for that hype.